Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for our How to Prepare for Grad School workshop. My name is Aliana Guzman, and I'm an Assistant Director of Admissions at Claremont Graduate University. I specifically represent the School of Educational Studies. A little bit about myself. I've been working in higher education for the past 7 years, specifically within admissions and recruitment. I am a first-generation student myself. And I'm just really excited to get to do this workshop with you all today. I do have a colleague with me today, and I'll defer to her so she can introduce herself.
Thank you so much, Aliana. No, my name is Jill Stagel. I am the Assistant Director of Admissions here at CGU, and the programs I specifically work with are the arts programs here. So art, music, arts management, art business. But a little bit about me quickly too. I am also a recent graduate of CGU. I graduated in May 2020 with my Master of Arts in Art Business, as well as Master of Fine Arts. And I did wait a little bit to go to grad school from undergrad. So I definitely have firsthand experience on how to prepare for grad school and what you should do, which is everything I didn't do, which is, I'm happy to be here so that you all don't make the same mistakes that I did too. But yeah, I will go ahead and let you know what all we're going to be going through today. So we will be talking about first, how to prepare for grad school and finding your fit and what does that even mean and look like, and how to apply to grad school, what kind of materials go into applications and producing strong written materials. We're going to talk about money because everyone loves talking about money. We're going to talk about financial aid and funding. And then along the way, we'll be giving you some insider tips and helpful resources. But if we missed anything, we'll also touch on that at the very end too. So let's go ahead and we'll jump in on how to prepare for grad school. The first question that a lot of people ask us when we do these workshops, and even when they're looking for programs, is, am I looking too early? How early is it to begin looking for grad school? Or am I too late? Did I miss the deadline to start looking? And honestly, there is no perfect time or no right time to start looking for grad school. I do feel like the sooner you do look for it, though, the better, when you kind of have an idea of what you want to do. And a lot of times it doesn't happen until your third, maybe fourth year of college. You don't know exactly what you want to do after you graduate with your undergrad. But something that I did is I started looking for graduate programs about 2 years before I graduated college, but then I didn't apply to any programs until 5 years after I graduated. But everyone's circumstances are different, what they're looking for. I just needed to kind of wait to see the right programs that were being offered for me, because the program I was looking for, there weren't that many in the market back in 2011. So, what can we do? But when you start preparing for grad school, kind of figuring out what you want to do, you kind of look and see, what kind of programs and degrees fit your career goals and aspirations, and what do those even look like? You might decide that you want to look for a program that's more based on the arts or in sciences or medical field. But then as you start researching programs and different kinds of options that you have, you might find that there's a lot of different options and avenues that you may have not have even knew existed before you started doing your grad school research. So that's why it's smart to do it sooner than a month before the deadlines. That way, for certain that those are the programs that you're looking for, and you give yourself time to explore and find the fit that you're looking for a master's or a doctoral degree. And another thing that you want to look at too, when you're preparing for grad school, is looking at the difference between a master's degree and a doctoral or PhD degree. It really kind of depends on what your end goal is in your career. And that's something that we'll be saying throughout this presentation is, it really kind of depends on what you're wanting to do and the goals that you have while you're looking for a program and what you're looking for a degree. And so what you want to do is you kind of want to see, do I need a PhD for what I want to do in my career goals? Is it okay if I just have a master's degree? Is there even a PhD program for what I'm wanting to do? For folks that are in the arts, there aren't PhD programs. The highest you can get is a Master of Fine Art. But doctoral degrees are more research-based degrees where you do a lot of intense research over time, and it's very narrowed for the topic. You know exactly what you're doing, and it's not too broad of a topic. Master's programs are more individualized, where you kind of have more hands-on experience and you kind of see what it is you're doing, and you kind of learn as you're going in school too. And you do some research depending on the program and degree of study that you're wanting to do. But it's definitely something that you want to make sure you're giving yourself enough time to do the research while you're going. Aliana, have I missed anything on this slide?
No, I think you were good, Jill. Awesome. Thank you for that.
Of course.
So finding your fit. So now that you have established, okay, I do think I want to pursue a graduate degree, whether that's a master's or a doctoral degree, it's time for you to do some research and pretty much do some homework about the various different programs that are offered, the various different schools. I know this could sound a little bit daunting, but there are so many resources available to you, such as admissions representatives like Jill and myself. But there's a search engines, list of schools that are the best for what field you're looking to get into. Something that you definitely want to do is get to know the program faculty of the program or the school that you are looking into, especially if you're looking into a doctoral degree. You're looking to do research in a very specific field. You want to make sure that that program and that institution has faculty that specialize in that area of research, because that faculty are going to support you throughout your time that you're in that program. So that's very important. Again, especially if you have very specific research interest, you do want to make sure that that program and that school has faculty that can support you in that. Also, the program focus, does this program align with your specific academic and professional research aspirations? We talk about finding your fit, and it goes both ways. You're looking for an institution that you see yourself at, but also the fit goes in terms of the institution do want to bring in students who perhaps share the same mission and values. So in terms of fit, it goes both ways, and that's something that you definitely do want to take into consideration. A lot of programs have missions. To give you an example, my School of Educational Studies, our mission is social justice through education. So those are the students that we're looking to bring into our programs. So that's something that you definitely want to look at if the program and the degree from that school is going to help you achieve what you're looking to do career-wise and research-wise. I always encourage students to do a campus visit. I know when the pandemic started, schools closed down, and it was very difficult for you to do that. But now institutions have been reopening slowly. Now they are allowing students to visit their campus, which is very important in my opinion, because by visiting campus, you get a feel for the institution. Do you envision yourself there? It gives you an opportunity to meet with admission staff, to perhaps engage with faculty or current students. What I'd like to tell students is that, everyone can offer you a different piece of information. An admissions representative can talk to you about, what do you need to apply to the program? How long is the program? Faculty can talk to you about your research interests, and if those are things that they can support you in. So everyone ends up giving you a different piece of information. It's almost like a puzzle that you put together to see, is this school and the program a right fit for me? So you definitely want to visit campus if you can do so, and engage with current students, staff, and faculty, because they will give you overall, feel for the institution. Look into the program schedule and timeline to degree. When you're looking at master's programs, typically it could be anywhere from a year and a half to 2 years. Doctoral degrees, we're talking about anywhere maybe from 5 to 10 years. So if you're you think I have no more in me than maybe another year or two of school, then you want to look into a master's program, that can get you to that timeline. Are you looking to be a working professional while you are in school? Does this school accommodate working professional schedules? Can you do part-time or evening classes? Sometimes students decide that, they want to get some professional experience before they go into graduate school or during the time that they are in graduate school. So you definitely want to make sure that that program is aligned with your timeline. You also want to take a look at the student support services that that program and that institution offers you. So what do they have set in place that's going to help you succeed while you are in that program? And this is very, very important. To give you an example, here at Claremont Graduate University, we're a graduate-only institution. So a lot of our student support services really focus on helping graduate students, like our Center for Writing and Rhetoric. They specialize in helping students write a thesis or a dissertation. So this is something that you definitely want to take a look at, because Graduate school is a big commitment, not only time and money wise. You definitely want to make sure that that school has student support services that will help you succeed during the time that you are enrolled there. And also take a look at the career trajectories of their alumni. Where are their alumni placed? I believe that LinkedIn is a great tool for this. It's connecting with alumni is also great in my opinion. You can talk to them about their experiences in the program, things that they wish they would have perhaps done differently, things that they think they did just fine. Again, because every piece of information is going to help you find that fit for the program and the institution. Jill, do you think I missed anything on this slide?
No, there's so much to talk about. We could literally talk for an hour about every slide, to be honest. I think the only thing I would want to add is with the student support services, like Aliana mentioned, see what schools and programs have while you're in school, but also beyond. There's actually 2 or 3 of the services that CGU offers our students while they're in school that they also get after they graduate at no extra cost to them. So definitely see what kinds of programming is available. An example here is, the Career Development Office, the Center for Writing and Rhetoric, and Preparing Future Faculty are all available to them. The only one that has cost to alumni is the Preparing Future Faculty program, but that's because there's a certificate awarded at the very end of it, but it's a very low cost. It's not like you're paying tuition dollars prices for that certificate, but it's definitely something to look into. That way, if you know that you're going to want to have access to a writing center or a career development office after you graduate, see what's out there and what they offer and ask those questions, because a lot of times, it's not something that's necessarily listed on the websites. And so you just want to make sure that you're checking into that. But going from here, we're going to talk about how do you even apply to grad school? How does one go about it? And this is a super fun thing to talk about, in my opinion. So the first few bullet points, it's just basically saying, look at what the requirements are. Look at the application guidelines or requirements, see what's listed there. What all do you need in terms of letters, transcripts, writing samples, stuff like that, but just kind of get an idea. And what I did when I was applying to grad schools, I made a list of everything I needed on my computer. I had a separate folder for every school I was applying to. That way I didn't get my statement of purpose mixed up with one school and the other. So that way I didn't say, I would love to go to CGU to a different institution, because they would be like, this is not CGU. What are you doing? This is, X university. But while you're putting all of it together and while you're reviewing the application guidelines, take a look and see when are all these materials due. Not all of the materials are due at the same time for every college and university for all the programs. Sometimes a university has a deadline of January 15. Another university could have a deadline of February 1st. Some of them might have final deadlines where they don't have accept applications after a certain date. And if schools are like us, where we kind of have rolling admission, where we'll accept applications well into the summer, you just want to kind of be mindful of when that is. But also looking to apply near the priority deadline. Usually there'll be a priority deadline or an early bird deadline. And that's always best if you can get to that deadline, because it gives you priority access to your application being reviewed. It also can give you priority access to funding if that's something that the institution is offering you. So definitely take a look at those and mark those on your calendars or your Google Calendar, whatever you decide to use. That way it can ping you and let you know that you want to start working on those materials. But the one thing that we can't stress enough, and it sounds super silly to say, is that you really want to follow the directions that are on the website for the application. Is how many recommenders do they want minimum? Is there a maximum of recommenders for your letters? Does it want official or unofficial transcripts? Are there writing prompts and specific font sizes and stuff like that? You definitely just want to make sure that you're looking at every little rock and make sure you're looking under everything too, to make sure that you have everything the way that you need to have it. That way your application doesn't get disqualified because you just didn't follow the directions. You do also want to request not only your academic transcripts early, but you also want to start identifying your recommenders early that you're going to ask to write your letters of recommendation. Because with the transcripts, sometimes the universities and colleges, that can take a little while to process, because they're processing it not just for current students, but alumni of the programs. They might also be requesting that too. And you also want to take a look too to see does your program require official or unofficial transcripts for the application to be reviewed? Here at CGU, we can review your application with an unofficial transcript, but other institutions do prefer official transcripts to review your application. And when you're looking for your recommenders, when you're looking at those timelines to see when do you have to have that application turned in by with all of your materials, try to identify who you're going to want to have write your letters of recommendation. A lot of you, if you've been thinking about graduate school here and there, you probably have an idea of what professors or faculty member you would want to recommend you for a graduate program, but it's most of the time because you already have that good relationship and good rapport with that professor. And when you're asking them if they would write you a letter, you also want to make sure that they're going to write you a stellar letter of recommendation. You don't necessarily want to ask a professor you had 2 classes with but barely spoke to one-on-one, in not too much email interaction, because you want to make sure that the letter of recommendation is going to help you stand out to the admissions committee as much as you can. But also you want to provide them with supplemental materials like your statement of purpose and your updated resume. Some of them might ask for your writing sample if it asks for your writing sample, so they can get an idea of what you're even doing and what kind of program you're wanting to do and what you want to do when you're done if you haven't really talked to them about your career goals. And you really want to give your recommenders plenty of time to think about and to write your letter of recommendation. I usually suggest about 4 to 6 weeks before you need to have that letter in is when you should start asking them to write the letter. If you ask too soon, like if you ask now November 2nd for a February 1st deadline, it might be a little too early. They might forget that they're writing you this letter because that's plenty of time in between. 3 months is a long time. So I would say 4 to 6 weeks would be a good timeline to start asking for those letters. And that way they know that they'll allow you to write, send that to them. So they'll write the letter and you can have the link sent to them. And you do want to give yourself plenty of time to write your personal statement or statement of purpose. And we'll talk about that in a little while, but you're going to go through a lot of different revisions and reviews, and you want to make sure that you're giving yourself time to edit that. And lastly, on this slide, you want to triple check, quadruple check all the application materials before you submit, and then make copies for yourself if you're sending hard copies. Otherwise, I always saved a copy on my computer in those folders. You don't want to be stuck in a situation where you send a statement of purpose to the wrong school and it has the wrong name listed on it. A good example that I always like to tell people is when I was applying to graduate school, I spelled Pittsburgh, the city, wrong. It was the last word in the last sentence of my last paragraph in my statement of purpose. And yeah, I didn't get it. But also, there is a Pittsburgh without an H. Fun fact, it's just in California. So I always told people, because I'm not originally from California, that I was always meant to be here. But save yourself the panic of not spelling something right, and just make sure that you're crossing all your T's and dotting your I's before you submit everything. Aliana, did we get everything on this one before we start talking about application materials?
Yes, I think you got it, Jill.
Awesome. And so this is really generally what you'll see requested on an application for graduate school or a PhD program. Most will ask for an online application form and an application fee. Fun fact, if you talk to the admissions people that are at the programs that you're looking at, a lot of times they have application fee waiver codes. If you go to an event like this one or an information session or do a one-on-one session with the admissions representative, a lot of times they might give you a fee waiver code. So it saves you some money. And so you definitely want to save money where you can, because grad school applications they're not too cheap. So save the money where you're able to, and definitely ask for those fee waiver codes. You'll most likely need official or unofficial transcripts, a resume or CV, and if you're an international student, an English proficiency exam. But if you're going to Sonoma State, you most likely won't need that, since it is in the continental US at an English speaking institution. And with the program dependent items, it kind of depends on the program you're applying to and what kind of degree level you're applying to. And you might have to do submit official test scores, so like GRE, GMAT, LSAT, MCAT, depending on what you're looking at with the program. So if you're looking for med school, you'll need, I believe it's the MCAT. If you're looking for business programs, a lot of times you'll need the GRE or GMAT, same with psychology programs that might ask for it. But lately too, some schools are waiving those test scores. So if you're not sure, you definitely can ask, but you want to make sure you're giving yourself plenty of time to study for those tests, because they're not easy. So you want to make sure that you're giving yourself enough time to study, take the test, and possibly retake the test if you need to. Don't get yourself in a situation where you don't have time to retake the test, especially if it's a school you really want to gain admission to. You also will need letters of recommendation in a lot of cases. Different programs just ask for different amounts of letters. So you might need 2, you might need 3. It just kind of depends on what the program is requesting. And you'll might need a personal statement or statement of purpose, and we'll talk about the differences in those shortly. And depending on the program you're applying for, you might need a creative sample or a portfolio, as well as an interview or audition. So if you're looking at a fine arts program, whether it's visual art, dance, music, they might ask you to send in a portfolio, just a creative sample to send, so they can kind of see what it is you're doing and what kind of art you do. And if you need an interview or audition, that's usually a good sign. If you make it to the interview portion of the application process, it definitely means that the school is interested in talking to you and learning more about you. So definitely be confident about that. And with the interview, it really is an opportunity for the program to get to know you a little bit better. We do interviews for the art business and management programs here at CGU, and it's really an opportunity for you to really expand on your application materials, because there are word limits on the personal statement, and there's only so much you can put in there that you really want to get across to the admissions committee. So definitely, if you make it that far, that's a really good sign, and definitely just be confident in yourself that you made it. And really quickly too, before we go on to talking about strong written materials with your resume and CV, I always like to stress to folks that this isn't just your typical job application resume that you might submit if you're applying for a job. There is no page limit that you have to worry about. You don't need to worry about keeping your resume to a page. It's perfectly fine to have it go further, so you're able to put down research that you've done, experience that you've done, volunteer work, especially if it's relevant to the field that you're wanting to go into. And if you've had any exhibitions or performances, publications that you've done, that's something that we would love to see in your resume and CV, because that would be awfully hard to put in your statement of purpose too. So anything that you feel that you want to put down in that resume, go ahead and do it. And that's perfectly fine. You don't need to worry about sticking to a page. Aliana, did I miss anything there?
I think you covered everything, Jill. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So in terms of producing strong written materials, again, we mentioned that the application might look a little bit different depending on program, depending on school, but something that you will most likely have to submit is this statement of purpose. And pretty much what the statement of purpose is pretty much where is your opportunity to get to express your interest in the program, your interest in the school. It's typically read by a review committee, so faculty, program director, maybe the admissions representative, but typically they don't have, input in terms of you being admitted into the program or not. But typically it's a program director or faculty committee from that program, from the department, the school. And what it typically focuses on is why that program in that school. Where did your passion for that work come from? So this is your opportunity to kind of say a little bit your life story and say, what has happened in your life that's bringing you up until this point where you're saying, I want to pursue this master's or I want to pursue this PhD. Faculty typically want to know what your general research interests are. I told my students, some students get overwhelmed, or they are concerned that they expect you to have your dissertation question set. That's not what faculty are expecting, but they do want you to talk about your general research interest, because that shows them that you put some thought into the particular program that you're applying into, the school, and how the degree is going to help you achieve your career and academic goals and aspirations pretty much. How are your lived experiences, educational trajectory goals, practical experience aligned with your graduate aspirations? How do you see yourself contributing to the field of research or discipline? So, not only are you going to talk about, potential faculty that you're interested in working with, and, how you believe they can support you in your research. But you also want to talk about what you hope to contribute to that particular field, that particular program and department. What do you hope to achieve with the degree? Again, this shows faculty that you've done your homework. You put your thought into, why you're looking to earn the degree, why you're looking to attend that particular institution. It's not something that it was spur of the moment that you said, oh, I think I'm gonna go for a PhD because I have a lot of free time. So this is your opportunity to pretty much talk to faculty directly. So we had mentioned before that some programs require interviews and some programs don't. So your statement of purpose, if you're not doing an interview, is your opportunity to speak directly to that faculty member. This statement of purpose is something that it should not be written in a day. It's something that you should take some time to reflect, do some brainstorming, and you're going to have to have someone proofread it for you, revise, and so forth. I know that sometimes it's easy for students to be inclined to use the same statement of purpose for the different programs and different schools that they are applying to, especially if you're applying to quite a few schools. My advice is that you refrain from doing that because faculty can really tell if that statement of purpose was catered toward their program and their institution. I know it's going to be a little bit more work for you, but it's really going to make the difference. Again, if you really tailor that statement of purpose for that program in that school, my advice is that you work with your writing center at your institution in terms of getting it revised, making sure that it is flawless. As my colleague Jill mentioned, getting a statement of purpose that perhaps is not in the best shape. So if there's a ton of grammatical errors, things like that, that's not a good look. And that could almost be an automatic deny. So you really want to put your best foot forward when it comes to the statement of purpose. Have friends read it for you. I know sometimes it's hard to talk about yourself and your accomplishments and, why I think I am the best or a good fit for this program. Sometimes talking to a mentor or friends or colleagues, they can tell you, oh, I think you're a great collaborator. I think you are a good communicator, a good presenter. Sometimes they can give you pointers and tell you things about yourself that you may not have been aware of before. But again, mainly what you want to take away from the statement of purpose is that you need to take some time to reflect. You need to take some time to brainstorm, write, and do many revisions until it's pretty much perfect. Again, for your grammatical errors, you want to maybe share with the mentor or colleagues to have, quite a few people read it and give you feedback. And then at the end, just make sure that all loose ends are tied up. Sometimes students are concerned that, in a particular semester, a particular year, they did not perform the best. Maybe their GPA was not the best or as good as it could have been. Sometimes the statement of purpose is a good opportunity for you to address that, especially if you're not doing an interview. That's a great opportunity for you to acknowledge, almost acknowledge the elephant in the room and say, I know I did not perform as well as I would have during the semester. But if you see, the following semester I achieved a 4.0, or these are the academic strategies that I plan to implement to be successful in this particular program this time around. So if that's a concern that you have, we like to tell students that a statement of purpose is a good place for you to address it if you feel the need to. But Jill, did you want to add anything on here?
No, I think that's perfect. And especially, definitely want to cater to your audience. Faculty do review it. Something that you can do too before you even turn in your application, if you feel inclined to, and is something you're interested in, is meeting with a faculty member if you're able to and connecting with them. That way, when they read your statement of purpose, they can put a face with a name and the writing. Sometime that can help, especially if you feel like, your GPA wasn't fantastic. I know I was nervous about my GPA as well. There's a lot of things that the statement of purpose can really do and showcase. Definitely don't regurgitate your CV and resume in your statement of purpose. That's why you're giving us your resume. So if you feel like you want to pull from an experience that was important that you had that's listed on your resume, that's definitely a fantastic idea, but don't list all of your accomplishments in your statement because that's definitely not what it's intended to be. That's for your resume. Yeah, Vicky.
Yeah, I was you mentioned meeting with a faculty about the statement of purpose. By faculty, you're referring to the faculty in the school where the student currently is at, right?
No, what I mean with that is if you, let's say that you're looking at CGU and you're really interested in the economics department, just for example, I'm in the business school right now. If you're interested in the economics department and you want to learn more about the department, you can request to meet with Professor Jay Prague. And then he's always, a lot of faculty are actually really open to talking with students. It just depends on the schedule and time they have, but it's also a really great way for students to really see if that program is a really good fit for what they're looking for. And then if they do decide to apply, they do their statement of purpose. Let's say Jay reads their statement of purpose, they would be able to say, oh, this is Jill's statement of purpose. I met with her a couple of months ago or a month ago. We either talked over email, met over Zoom, however the conversation went. And it really does help place you in the faculty's mind, and it keeps you in the faculty's mind. That way, when they're going over your materials, it does help make you stand out a little bit more than if you were like me and did nothing before you went into grad school. But no, that's really good. Thank you for asking. That's a really good thing to clarify. Always good if you want to have your mentor or your recommenders read your statement of purpose before you submit it too. A lot of times they do want to read it so they have a clear idea of what you want to do career-wise or what your goals are to go to graduate school. And they would also be a great person to help edit too. They might say, you don't need this paragraph. Why is this paragraph in there?
Like a faculty in your department.
Yep, faculty in your department, whoever you're asking for your references from. It could be someone out of your department, depending on your circumstances.
All right, thank you.
Of course. It's a great question. All right, let's talk about money. I always love talking about money. I think it was because I went through grad school myself, so I'm definitely not afraid of it. But I think that this is really important for folks to understand, especially having that financial aid literacy and knowing what different types of aid can mean. So this is just a small snapshot of what you might see for funding. Fellowships and scholarships, those words can be used interchangeably. Here at CGU, we don't necessarily use the word scholarship, we use the word fellowship. And some fellowships like CGU, we don't ask you really to work in exchange for receiving the fellowship. We just really ask you to go to class and do a good job and really take the time to be a graduate student or PhD student, depending on the program you're going for. But some programs, they might ask for you to do a teaching assistant or graduate assistant position in exchange for a fellowship. So that all depends on institution and program that you're applying to. So when you're looking at the different kinds of aids that are offered at the institution, take a look at that to see if there's any kind of work stipulated with receiving a fellowship offer or any kind of tuition waiver where they waive your tuition for you to go to school, but you might have to do a teaching assistant job or graduate assistant job. And with those assistantships, those are all a little different depending on the program you're going into. With a teaching assistant job, you might be helping teach a class, you might be helping grade papers or research with the professor you're working with. And with a graduate assistant position, it might be where you're not necessarily helping a specific professor, but you're helping with a department or doing a specific job where you're working on campus. So definitely when you're looking at those assistantships, I always recommend to people, see how many hours a week you're allowed to work, or if there's a minimum hours a week that you're supposed to be working, to see if it even works with the schedule and with how you know that you are as a student. And if you need to focus more on school, or if you already have a full-time job, like Aliana mentioned, if you're a full-time working professional and you're doing graduate school or PhD program, and in conjunction with it, you just want to make sure that those are in line with what your availability is and what you're able to handle in terms of workload. There also are grants that are available, as well as on-campus employment. A lot of what we call them here is student worker positions. So you might be eligible to have a student worker position that's separate from federal work study, and we'll talk about that on the next slide. One thing I do want to mention too are stipends. We don't have that listed on here. Some institutions do offer stipends, and those are usually for living expenses. You don't see stipends being offered too much in a graduate program, but you might see those offered in a PhD program. But that way you kind of know the differences. With stipends, usually it goes along with living expenses, but if you're talking about tuition for your fellowships for your tuition or money off your tuition, it's usually fellowships or scholarships. Aliana, did I miss anything before we start talking about work study and FAFSA?
I just wanted to add, so what I really like to highlight on this slide personally is to encourage you to to try to learn the differences of how financial aid works at the undergraduate level versus how it works at the graduate level, because it is quite different. To give you an example, when I was an undergraduate student myself here in California, I was receiving what we call the Cal Grant, the Pell Grant. The institution that I attended gave me a grant. So this was free money that I didn't have to pay back. When we talk about a financial aid at the graduate level, a lot of institutions, what that usually means is just student federal loans. There will be fellowships or scholarships, grants that the institution offers you that is free money, but oftentimes students do have to pay the difference or pay with student federal loans. I would like to encourage you to learn about the differences of how that works, because oftentimes we do see students get a little bit confused when they start a graduate program, because everything that they thought they knew how financial aid worked is completely different now. Also, you want to, if you're the schools and the programs that you're looking into, you do want to ask, what fellowships and scholarships are available, but are there separate applications required for them? And do they have different deadlines that I need to keep in mind, just so you don't miss on any of that? Also, I would like to encourage you to not to try to rely on that institution and that program to fully fund you alone. If that school offers fully funded positions, great. Go for it. And I hope that you do get that fully funded positions. But what we do see is that there's not that many of fully funded positions. So although you are receiving a scholarship, there might be an out-of-pocket expense. So as you're doing your research about schools and programs early on, you also want to look at external funding opportunities. There's so much money out there, especially if you're looking at very niche fields like women in STEM, things like that. There's a lot of money. So you definitely want to start looking for grants and external funding opportunities early on as well. So that's something that you don't have to worry once you're about to accept the admissions offer, saying, oh, can I really afford this program? Or once you're in the program, because again, there's so much money out there. I'm sure that your current financial aid office does have a lot of information about external funding opportunities. So this is me just encourage you to learn the differences about financial aid, ask about different application, fellowship and scholarship application processes, so deadlines, separate applications, and start looking at external funding opportunities early on as well.
Yeah, definitely. I was going to touch on the external funding opportunities because it's definitely something I stress to my students too, Aliana, because it's very important too, because while you're looking for graduate programs, and you're looking at the deadlines, also at the same time, if the school does have a list of different external scholarship offerings where you can kind of look at resources that they have, notate those deadlines too, because the deadlines are starting to come up already for those, which is kind of crazy to think about for the fall and next academic school year. So I would encourage you to apply for those at the same time that you're applying for graduate programs, even if you don't know the specific one you want to go to yet. If you're looking at 2 or 3 different programs, definitely worth doing that. And if you want, Aliana, we can go to the next slide, because I will also mention you can file for FAFSA already. It is after October 1st. So you are totally fine to file for FAFSA for the upcoming 2022-2023 school year, which is insane to think about. But I would also apply for FAFSA early. And you can list all of the schools that you are applying to on the FAFSA. I believe you can list up to 10, and it will send up to 10 schools the FAFSA information. I know that because my husband applied to 10 grad schools once at the same time. But it's important too, because on there, if you are filling it out, you can notate if you want to be considered for federal work study. It doesn't mean that you will receive it, but it definitely will show if you're eligible to receive it or not. It shows your financial needs. So when we were talking about fellowships, there are a couple different kinds. There's department-based fellowships as well as need-based fellowships sometimes at institutions. And the way that institutions can look at your financial need is through the FAFSA and seeing what kind of expected family contribution that you may be expecting. And usually when you're applying to a graduate or PhD program, they don't consider, your parents' income information like they might when you're at an undergraduate school, which is also nice. But definitely fill out the FAFSA nice and early so you can be considered for that. while you're looking for funding and schools. I know it sounds like we're giving you loads of homework, but trust me, it will save you by the time the deadlines start coming up, because that way you won't feel like you're just rushing to get everything done. Other sources of aid other than federal work study is through FAFSA. It shows if you're eligible to receive federal student loans, much like you may receive already now in your undergraduate school. There's also private loans. If you for some reason aren't able to or do not want to receive federal loans, you can look at private loans. The interest rates can be just a little bit higher than the federal loans, so sometimes people don't like to do that if they don't need to. Sometimes too, if you're working full-time or part-time somewhere, some organizations and companies out there do have tuition remission benefits still, and that's something that you can learn from your HR department. One thing that I would encourage you to ask them too is if they do offer tuition remission, see if it's for a specific program, because a lot of times they'll say, oh yeah, we have tuition remission if you're receiving a business degree, or we have a tuition remission if you're receiving X kind of degree. So definitely ask those questions too from your HR department if it is something that you're trying to look at a little bit more. We already touched on the external scholarships and fellowships, but I don't think that we can stress that enough because it's so important. You definitely don't want to depend on the institution or program to fully fund or even fund it halfway, depending on the program and where you're wanting to go to. You just want to make sure that you're setting yourself up for the least amount of stress and financial hardships later on as much as you can. And the last thing that we have listed on here is veterans benefits too. Some schools do offer veterans benefits, quite a bit of them do actually. So if you or your parents have served in the armed forces, there are programs out there such as the Yellow Ribbon program. So if it is something that you have served, definitely talk to your admissions representative and they can point you in the right direction of someone that you would want to speak to in the financial aid department to see what kind of aid you're eligible to receive and what they would need from you to check the eligibility on that. But definitely fill out that FAFSA nice and early, never hurts. It's just not that much fun to fill out if I remember it correctly.
So some insider tips and helpful resources here. I know that just like Jill mentioned, it feels like we just gave you a lot of information and it could feel a little bit overwhelming, but don't feel overwhelming. There are many resources available to you, such as the admissions representative. So for example, admissions representative like Jill, myself, our job is to guide you and help you throughout the application process. So you're not alone when it comes to this. So don't feel overwhelmed. It could seem a little bit daunting, but trust me, that's what we are here for. Utilize them. We work very closely with faculty. We know what they are looking for in applications. So we can really give you some good pointers. These are the things that you definitely want to highlight, things that you want to work, pay very close attention to in your application. We can connect you to current students, to alumni. We can connect you to faculty. So we are one of your main and most important resources. You also will want to connect again with current students and alumni. So current students can tell you, what is their experience like in their program. Alumni can tell you what was their experience in the program, things that they wish they would have done differently. Maybe they have a really cool job and you want to know, how did they get from once they graduated to their current job now and what path did they take? Again, you want to take a look into faculty, especially faculty that are aligned with your particular research interests. You don't want to end up in a school in a program that don't have any faculty that specialize in that particular area, because again, this degree is is a big investment, time and money. So you definitely want to look at the faculty that are there, connect with them if possible. Sometimes schools offer the option to observe classes. So prior to the pandemic, it was a lot easier here at CGU, but we could bring prospective students into the classroom so they get a feel for the actual program and an actual class from the program, which was also a good opportunity for them to connect with current students and faculty. But again, everyone will give you a different piece of information that will be helpful to find your fit and say, yes, this is the right school for me. Let me start the application process. So these are just some insider tips. I'm not sure if Jill, you want to add anything?
No, you hit the nail on the head. Talk to your admissions people, see if you can talk to people. It's basically that way you know if it's the right fit for you.
So here, we just wanted to share a little bit more about CGU for those of you that are not familiar with CGU. We are mainly known for a transdisciplinary approach. So there's definitely opportunities for you to learn across disciplines. our faculty here are doing transformational research. So I would really like to encourage you, if there's a particular area of interest or program of interest that we offer, definitely take a look at our faculty. We are a small graduate institution, so we only offer master's and PhD programs. So we do have and foster that intimate learning environment. All of our programs are national recognized and specialized programs. We do have practice-based learning. So in my programs, not only are you learning about theories, but you're learning about how to implement those particular theories to specific work problem in spaces. We have a very strong alumni network. That is something that you definitely want to look at, regardless of the program and the school that you're looking into. I would say networking should be one of the things on top of your list of things that you definitely want to do during your time there. And Claremont is an energetic location. We are about, I would say, 35 miles away from LA. We are about, I would say, maybe 30 to 40 minutes away from Disneyland. The beaches here, there are San Diego, Santa Monica. So we are a very, very energetic location. For those that are not familiar, definitely take a look at a map and see, where we are located. But without further ado, we would like to thank you for joining us for this workshop. We definitely hope that you found it informative. Here's some of our contact information. So if you do have any additional questions, maybe that didn't come up during the presentation, but they do come up tomorrow or the next day, feel free to send us an email or give us a call. We're happy to help. If you do have any questions now, we're happy to take them right now as well.
Yeah, you mentioned that the resume could be more than a page. I would think not more than 2 pages. Am I right?
No, it can be longer. So I've seen resumes up to 10 pages. Yeah, because the resume for a graduate program is really for someone to really show more of their in-depth work experience and research exhibitions, depending on what program they're doing. So it doesn't have to be limited to 2 pages, because if there's someone that say they've been out of college for quite some time and they have a lot of experience working in theater and they really want to show productions and everything that they've worked on, their resume can't be limited to just 2 pages. And if you're like me, my resume right now was currently 2 pages all the way to the bottom, just because of all the relevant experience I feel like I've had. You don't want to cut that off. It's definitely not like a job resume. It's more of a comprehensive resume and curriculum vitae that you would be submitting for a graduate or PhD program.
Got it. That's really good to know. Thank you for clarifying that.
No, of course. I'm happy you asked. Thank you.
Mhm.
Ivana.
Oh yeah, I had a question about like the when you mentioned about like the loans and stuff. So what if during your undergrad you took out a loan? Would you have to pay that before going into graduate school? Like, does that affect anything with that when applying to the graduate program?
I can try to tackle this one. So that's not typically a requirement. The way it works is though that whatever loans you did take out during your time at that institution, once you earn the degree or you stop attending the institution, you will be required to start repaying it back 6 months after you graduated or you stop attending the institution. But it's not a requirement that you need to pay it off before you start a graduate program. So if you already have current loans and you go into a graduate program and perhaps you take out more loans, that will just be added to that. Once you start a new program or start a new program at a new institution, those loans will be put on pause until you finish that program. And then 6 months after, again, you will have to repay. So say that you graduate and then you take a year off. During that year, you might have to repay. But once you start a new program, those loans are put on hold because you're a student until, again, you're done with that program, you graduate or you just stop attending the institution. I hope that helps. I don't know, Jill, if you want to add anything.
No, it's basically what you just said. You definitely don't have to pay the loans back in its entirety before you start a new program. It'll be put on deferment is what they call it when you are attending another program. But once you stop attending, like Aliana said, 6 months after, they'll go back into repayment unless you were in the pandemic and had loans. The loans will go back into repayment until January 2022. But but no, you got it perfectly.
And also, is there like anything, because I've heard some of my peers talk about like applying for loan forgiveness. Does that still exist or not anymore?
No, it definitely does still exist. It depends on the sector and the work that you're doing for loan forgiveness. And you would want to look at the borrower that you're borrowing from. I know that it's not all equal if you're borrowing federal or private. But for federal loans, I know that, for some loan forgiveness programs, if you work, in some organizations after so many years of making consistent payments that it can be forgiven. But I would definitely defer you to your loan provider's website and contacting them. I myself have personally talked to many, many people that have serviced my loans, and they just want to help people. They're a lot like admissions representatives where they just want to help you. They don't want your payments to go into default. They don't want you to get delinquent on your payments. So they are wanting to help you and help educate you in any way they can. So I would definitely tell you it still does exist, but I would definitely call them and ask them specifically how you can get into loan forgiveness and if you have to go into specific kind of work for the loans to be forgiven.
Thank you.
No, that's a great question. Thank you so much for asking that question.
Yeah, those are really good questions.
I have another question. So how would you go about just like asking for a letter of recommendation from like a professor? I don't know if you can answer that.
Oh yeah.
So usually I like to tell students to ask them, are you comfortable with writing me a strong letter of recommendation? If they say anything but a firm yes, I would definitely recommend that you ask someone else. As Jill had mentioned earlier in the presentation, you definitely want to ask them early on, and you want to give yourself some buffer time. So if you know that the application is due February 1st, you want to tell them that you need the letter like a week and a half before that time. Because again, depending on the time of the year, maybe they are midterms, finals, maybe they just started a term and they're starting to get, their class, is taken off. You definitely want to keep that in mind in terms of the time and just say, are you comfortable with writing me a strong letter of recommendation? Sometimes we tell students that it might be helpful for you to supply your recommender with a copy of your resume and your statement of purpose, just to give them a little bit more context and write you a stronger letter. Mm-hmm. But like Jill mentioned, this is someone that you took a few classes with, not just one or two classes, because most likely that letter might not be as strong as you will need it to be. But that's just my advice. Jill, I'm not sure if you want to add anything.
Yeah. So by the time I graduated but when I knew I was looking for graduate programs, I don't know if either of you have really close connections with some of the professors and faculty that you've had classes with. But usually, those are some of the folks that you gravitate for the letters, because usually they're in the field you want, you had a real good connection with them, and it's something that you have a mentor-like relationship with. So for a lot of them, it doesn't come to a surprise when you ask them. And I think that putting the word strong in the ask is important too, because you just don't want a letter of recommendation. You need a strong letter of recommendation, because sometimes that's really what's going to set you apart. Sometimes is having those letters. And so when you ask them, hey, would you mind writing me a strong letter of recommendation? If they say, sure, that sounds fantastic. Then, a lot of times they'll say, what program are you looking into? Or, when is it due? But also, letting them know what you're doing, the deadline, how many schools that you're going to be asking them to write it for. Because if you're looking at multiple programs, it's important for you to let those recommenders know early that you're going to be asking them for 3 or 4 letters of recommendation to 3 or 4 different schools. That way that they're aware that it's not going to be just one request, that they might be getting multiple requests. And I think that having that foresight for them is really good, but it's also a respectable thing to do for them, because it shows that you respect their time, and that's really going to make them happy. But no, I mean, just outright asking them obviously is perfectly fine. If you've been having conversations about going to a graduate or PhD program, it's not going to come to a surprise that you're going to be asking them for a letter. So yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and something that I didn't add when it comes to finding your fit, definitely you're going to look at different schools, just searching online and things like that. But faculty are really great resource for you as well, especially if you're looking to get into psychology and you're taking a few psych classes, asking those professors, they know a thing or two about psychology programs and schools, and maybe they can give you some pointers of, I know this school has a really good program for this particular field in psychology. So definitely you want to have those conversations with your faculty advisors or faculty mentors if possible. And that's kind of a good segue to ask them for a letter of recommendation when the time does come for you to apply.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I would also like to add that, let's say a faculty really knows you quite well, but there's a part of you that they don't know that could be helpful for them. It might also help if you give them that information, like a portfolio or, something, your resume or whatever it is, have them look at it and then ask if they could give you a strong letter of recommendation, right? Because they might know you, but maybe not as well as they would if you were to give them this extra information, maybe research you've already started or something like that on top of, your stellar record with that teacher.
Okay, that makes sense. I mean, I think I have a couple connections with professors, but just because of like COVID, I feel like it's been harder to like keep contact with them. So I think that's just like my main fear, just like.
Yeah. Well, a couple tips, and this is coming from someone who is an amnivert, but an extreme extrovert when it comes to trying to keep connected with people. But it's okay to send every once in a while, if you're trying to keep and foster those connections that you've built with the mentors that you've come across with the faculty that you have and the faculty that you've had before, is you always can just send an email to say, hi, Professor X, I just wanted to check in to see how you're doing and see how your semester has been going. Maybe you have time for a coffee or a Zoom, whatever your situation is in terms of COVID, and comfortability with the professor and yourself to just catch up for like 10-15 minutes. It doesn't even have to be a long time, but a lot of professors really do love talking to their students, and a lot of professors welcome you coming into office hours. So if you're just trying to find a way to stay connected, especially during these crazy times with the pandemic, just sending a simple email. And if they don't respond, don't take offense to it. As we all know, faculty are super busy, especially this time of year when midterms are getting over and finals are going to be coming up in a little over a month. But then they'll eventually see your email and they might say, oh my gosh, I am so sorry. I would love to catch up with you. Do you have time for a quick phone call or something? But there are definitely a lot of different creative ways that you can try to stay in touch with people. That way, if you feel like it's important for you to foster those relationships, you can. I am an oddball where I found out my professors' birthdays, and to this day, I still call my undergrad professors 15 years later and tell them happy birthday. But it makes them remember me.
Okay, thank you. I think I might actually try that out.
Awesome. The birthday party? I'm just teasing. All right, Ivana.
Yeah. I forgot what I was gonna say. Oh, can the letter of recommendations, can they also be from advisors or employers that you worked with, or is it just professors?
So
go ahead. Yeah.
I was just going to say, that's a great question. And it's something that we didn't really mention, but I would say when you are talking with the admissions representative, you can also ask them, ideally, what type of letters of recommendation do the faculty want to see? Are they looking to see academic? Are they looking to see professional? I can tell you for my programs now, it's academic, because they want to hear from faculty that have worked with you at an academic capacity that can talk about your academic skills and abilities. Mm-hmm. But again, that would be a great question for the admission representative. Maybe if you're applying to a business program, they do want to see some sort of professional letter. So again, I think it will depend on the program mm-hmm. and the faculty that are reading your application, which it would be a really good question for that admissions representative, because we can tell you ideally what they want to see. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
All
You're
right,
welcome.
well, it looks like we are just out of time. So thank you so much to Aliana and Jill for your time today and your valuable information. Thanks again for your time.
Of course. Thank you so much for having us. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us and hosting us. If you do have any other questions, our contact information is here, so feel free to send us an email. Sometimes I know you can't think of it the moment of, but it will come later today or tomorrow. But yes, we're happy to help, and thank you so much.